Friends, this lecture is in continuation with the series of lectures on plant secondary metabolites, wherein we have already discussed about alkaloids, flavonoids, terpenoids, coumarins, which we discussed yesterday, volatile oils, and so on and so forth. So today I am going to discuss another class of secondary metabolites, that is glycosides. Now glyco means sugars, so we can say that these are the compounds to which sugars have been attached. Now the sugars are normally attached to different chemical moieties which can belong to any class of secondary metabolite. They can be alkaloidal moiety, it can be a flavonoidal moiety, it can be a coumarin moiety, and so on and so forth. So friends, glycosides are important because of their potent therapeutic activity, and some of the glycosides are even used in common household purposes for treatment of different types of disorders. So what we are going to learn through this lecture is that what are glycosides. We are going to define the glycosides, that how these glycosides are defined, then their distribution in the plant kingdom, and as I told you that these are the compounds wherein sugar molecule is attached to the moiety that can belong to any class of secondary metabolite. So we can say that the glycosides are having a very wide distribution in the plant kingdom. This will be followed by the discussion on the properties of the glycosides, followed by the extraction procedures that are being used to extract out these secondary metabolites from the plant matrix. We will also discuss about the different extraction techniques, conventional or modern, that are being utilized to extract these compounds. And then we will discuss the classification aspect of glycosides, how these can be classified, whether it can be on the basis of the type of the sugar or the non-sugar moiety that is attached along with sugars, and so on and so forth. And in the last we will discuss the uses of glycosides. Now the uses will be discussed under the individual class of glycoside that we are going to discuss. So coming on first to that, what are glycosides? Now as I briefly told you that these are the molecules to which are having sugar compounds or the sugar structures attached to them. And to what compounds these sugars are attached? Those compounds or those moiety can belong to any class of secondary metabolite. Thus broadly we can say that glycosides are the compounds having two structural components. One is the glycon part or the sugar part, and the other one is the non-sugar part, which is known as aglycon. Now the major biological activity of these glycosides is largely due to the aglycon part, whereas the sugar part is largely involved in increasing the absorption of these aglycon moieties across the membrane, because sugars are normally considered as water soluble, and therefore they can easily pass through the biological membranes, thereby taking along with them the aglycon moiety, which is responsible for the biological effect. So we can also say that since these sugars help in increasing the absorption of the aglycon molecules, they tend to increase the biological activity of that particular aglycon moiety, because they increase their absorption. So this is the basic mechanism how these glycosides are important for the therapeutic aspects. Now as I told you that these contained largely two structural components. One is the glycon or the sugar moiety, and the other one is the aglycon or the non-sugar moiety, and these two moieties are joined together through a glycosidic bond. Now what is a glycosidic bond? We know that in sugars there is a hemiacetal group or the anomeric carbon, and anomeric carbon is nothing but a carbon that is attached to two oxygen atom, and one of them is a hydroxyl group. So whenever the carbon or the anomeric carbon forms a bond with the hydroxyl group of the aglycon, that causes the formation of the glycosidic bond. So as you can see in this slide, we have taken methanol CH3OH as an aglycon molecule, and glucose molecule, which is considered as the glycon molecule. So the portion shaded with the blue shows you the hemiacetal region of the glycon molecule or the glucose molecule, and the portion shaded with red shows you the hydroxyl group of the aglycon. So whenever there is a bond formation between this hemiacetal group and the hydroxyl group, it causes the release of loss of water molecule, thereby forming a glycosidic bond between aglycon and glycon part. Now we know that sugars are optically active, and so are the different A-glycan moieties. So we can say that whatever glycosidic linkage is formed or the glycoside is formed is also an optically active compound. So whenever the glycosidic linkage that is formed between glycan and A-glycan falls below the plane, we call them as alpha glycosidic linkage, and whenever this linkage is above the plane, we call it as beta glycosidic or the D-glycosidic linkage. Now we move on to the distribution of glycosides. So as we discussed in the definition, that these are the compounds wherein a sugar molecule is attached to the A-glycan moiety or the non-sugar part, and this non-sugar moiety can belong to any class of the plant secondary metabolite. It can be an alkaloid, it can be a flavonoid, it can be a steroid, it can be a coumarin. So we can say that glycosides have a very wide distribution in the plant kingdom, and here I have taken a few examples of the families that are having members that are rich in glycosidic compounds. And the first example of the family is Scrophulariaceae, wherein the common example which one can easily remember is Digitalis purpurea or Digitalis lanata, and these two plants are rich in cardioactive glycosides, which are largely used for the treatment of congestive heart failure. Another example is Picrorhiza corua, which is rich in bitter glycosides, and it is largely used as a bitter plant. The second example of the family is Apocynaceae, and again it contains different types of glycosidic containing plants, and a common example is of the genera Nerium and Thivacea, and the species belonging to these genera contain again the cardioactive glycosides which are used to treat various cardioactive or the cardiac disorders. Third example is of Liliaceae family. Now Liliaceae family has various genera like Ergenia and Aloe, and the species belonging to these genera they contain different types of glycosides. Ergenia indica or Ergenia maritima, which are also known as jungli pyaj, they contain largely cardioactive glycosides, whereas aloe vera, we all know about aloe vera, it is mainly rich in anthraquinone glycosides. Then we have family Fabaceae, and genera are Senna, Glycyrrhiza and Sorelia, and Senna is commonly used for the treatment of constipation and is rich in anthraquinone glycosides, whereas Glycyrrhiza is rich in saponin, triterpenoidal saponin glycosides, and Sorelia coraliifolia, which is also known as Bavachi and is largely used in treatment of psoriasis or leukoderma or hypopigmentation disorders, is largely rich in the furanocoumarin glycosides, which we have already discussed. Other families, Dioscoreaceae, which is having a genera Dioscorea, and different species of Dioscorea are rich in steroidal glycosides, and example of that steroid is diasgenin, and diasgenin is largely used in pharmaceutical industry for the synthesis of various hormones, specifically sex hormones and other hormones that are used for the steroidal treatments. Then Rosaceae is another family which contains the genera genus Prunus, and different species belonging to this Prunus genus contain glycosides, and the common example is Prunus amygdalus, one can easily remember, and it is commonly known as sweet almond or meetha badam in Hindi, and it also contains cyanogenetic glycosides. Gentianaceae is another family. It contains genera like Gentian and Chirata. Gentian and Chirata both contain bitter glycosides, and Swarcia chirata is one example for that. And other families are Cymarubiaceae, Apiaceae. Apiaceae is rich in the plants which are having coumarin glycosides. Rutaceae, again Ruta graveolens is a common example, which is again rich in coumarin glycosides. So these were the few examples of different families which are having members that are rich in different types of glycosides. Now we move on to the properties of glycosides. So as we discussed that they contain A-glycan molecule which can belong to any type of secondary metabolite class. So depending upon the type of the A-glycan molecule attached, we can have glycosides whether they can be crystalline or they can be amorphous. Glycosides can also be colorless, and some of the glycosides are even colored. Say for example anthraquinone glycosides, which are colored glycosides, and their color range from orange to reddish brown in color. And since sugar molecules are there in these glycosides, and these sugars provide polarity to glycosides, and therefore we can say that glycosides are generally polar compounds, and therefore they are more soluble in polar solvents like methanol, ethanol, or their aqueous mixtures. Whereas since these are polar compounds, they are insoluble in the organic solvents like petroleum ether or hexane, but their aglycon part, that is the part without sugar molecule, that is soluble in the organic solvent, and the solubility can vary from different solvents depending upon the type of the aglycon molecule that is being attached in the along with the sugar molecule, or that is present in the glycoside. Then glycosides, since they have a glycosidic linkage between the aglycon and the glycon part, they have vulnerability towards the hydrolysis, and their hydrolysis can occur either by water, by acid, or by an enzyme. So one has to take care when they are collecting the plant which is rich in glycoside. One has to take care either to dry them immediately or to first deactivate the enzymes that are present in the plant in order to prevent the hydrolysis of these glycosides. And as we already discussed that these have sugar molecules and different types of aglycon molecules, they are highly optically active, which we have already discussed. Most of these glycosides are bitter in taste. Obviously exceptions are there, and the most common exception is steviosides, which have a sweet taste. So this was all about the properties of glycosides, and now we move on to the extraction of these secondary metabolites. Now generally the extraction of glycosides involve three steps. First one is the inactivation of the glycosidic enzyme, which is the foremost and the most important step, because if we don't carry out this step immediately, then there is a possibility of the hydrolysis of the glycoside, and we may lose significant amount of glycoside when we are going to extract these compounds from the plant matrix. Second step is the extraction and the purification of the extract. And the third is the final separation of the glycoside from the mixture, and this separation can either be done by crystallization if possible, or we can also use different techniques for separating the individual type of glycoside that is present in that particular extract. So first we will discuss the inactivation of glycosidic enzymes. Now there are different methods of inactivating these glycosidic enzymes, which causes the hydrolysis of these glycosides, and eventually we can lose large amount of glycosidic content, and the concentration of aglycon will increase in the plant, thereby losing substantial potency of that particular plant or the glycosidic component. So one can always go for inactivation of the glycosidic enzyme by following any of these methods. First one is the drying the plant material at 100 degrees Celsius, followed by the slow drying. And this step is largely done whenever the plant is collected in a fresh form, because the enzymes are active in the fresh plant material, and one should immediately deactivate those enzymes in order to prevent the hydrolysis. So whenever you expose the plant material to 100 degrees Celsius, they immediately deactivate the enzyme, and after the specified time period, one should go for the slow drying in order to remove the moisture from that plant material completely. Second method is to treat the plant material with boiling water or alcohol or acetone. This again helps in deactivating the enzyme, but the precaution is if you expose the plant material to the boiling water for longer duration, this may eventually leads to the hydrolysis of the glycosides. So the word of caution while following this method is one has to be very specific about the duration for which you have to expose the plant material towards the boiling water or boiling alcohol. Third method is the freeze drying method, and in this we take the plant material and we immediately expose it to the freeze drying condition, thereby completely removing the water by sublimation as well as by deactivating the enzyme. Now this method is most useful method because it does not cause any kind of degradation to the glycosides. And the last method is the treatment of the plant material with acidic solvent. Now as we discussed that glycosides can be hydrolyzed either by water, by enzymes and by acids. So again the word of caution while following the fourth method, that is by the treatment of acidic solvent, one has to be very cautious regarding the duration of the extraction or the treatment with these acidic solvents. Vis-a-vis, one should also be careful regarding the pH of the acidic solvent, because this pH of the acidic solvent will depend upon the type of glycosides that are present in the plant matrix. Say for example, if plant is having very vulnerable type of glycosides which can be easily hydrolyzed. So for those kind of glycosides, you cannot go to the extreme acidic condition, and you cannot expose that kind of plant material for the longer duration towards these acidic solvents, because if you go for extreme pH conditions, or your exposure time is longer enough, it will again cause the hydrolysis of these glycosides, which will eventually cause the loss of the amount of glycosides that has to be extracted from the plant material. Now, once the enzymes are deactivated, we move on to the second step, that is the extraction and the purification of these glycosides. Now, the extraction procedure which is generally followed to extract the glycosides is known as Stas-Otto method, and it also involves different steps, and amongst these steps, first one is defattening. Now, defattening is a process wherein you remove various interfering compounds such as lipids, they can be waxes, or they can be pigments that are present in the plant. Say for example, if you are having a leafy drug, then the pigment will be chlorophyll. So you don't want these kinds of material to interfere in the separation process of glycosides when you are handling the complex mixtures of components that are present in the plant. So in defattening, we treat the plant material with less polar solvents like hexane or petroleum ether for sufficient period of time in order to remove these lipids, fats, or chlorophyll, because these components are soluble in these lipidic solvents like hexane and petroleum ether. Now, once the defattening is done, we followed it by the extraction with alcohol or hydroalcoholic mixtures. Now, glycosides, as we discussed, are the polar components, so they don't get solubilized in the defattening process where we are using the non-polar solvent. So after defattening, what we do is we discard that extract that is obtained by using the solvents hexane or petroleum ether. Then the plant material which is remaining is again dried, and this dried plant material is called as marc. It is again dried and is again extracted with alcohol or hydroalcoholic or the hydromethanolic mixtures. By doing this process, you can use various techniques, both conventional as well as modern. In conventional techniques, you can go for maceration or soxalate extraction, whereas or even reflux extraction. In modern techniques, you can use microwave assisted extraction, ultrasound assisted extraction, pressurized liquid extraction, and in some cases you can even go for supercritical fluid extraction. Now, the conventional techniques, obviously their duration of extraction is longer, their heat treatment is longer, so we have a tendency to lose a significant amount of glycosides when we are using the conventional techniques. On the contrary, when we use the modern techniques, wherein the temperature conditions can be easily controlled, the extraction time is very less, then we can save large amount of glycosidic content from getting hydrolyzed. So once the extraction is complete and we get alcoholic or the hydroalcoholic extract, we treat that extract with lead acetate in order to precipitate out tannins, because we know that tannins are also very polar components and they have a tendency to get solubilized along with glycosides in alcohol or hydroalcoholic solvents. So we add lead acetate, which causes precipitation of the tannins. We filter out those precipitates, and the filtrate is then concentrated to dry residue and or the semi-dried residue, which is then suspended in water for the fourth step, that is partitioning. The suspended extract can further be treated by different solvents in increasing order of polarity. Say for example, first we can again treat it with hexane or petroleum ether in order to remove the remaining pigmented material or the fatty material. Then after the treatment with hexane, we remove the hexane extract. Then we again treat the suspended extract with chloroform or dichloromethane in order to further remove the components that are soluble in chloroform or dichloromethane, followed by butanol treatment, which will again remove the substances that are soluble in butanol, and then we will remain with the remaining aqueous extract. So by doing this partitioning process, we are again, I can say that, partially purifying the glycosidic fraction or the extract, thereby removing the unwanted material through this partitioning process, where we are treating the extract or the suspended extract with different solvents and increasing order of the polarity. So once you obtained the fraction, say for example majority of the glycosides, they shift into the butanol fraction when the suspended extract is treated with butanol, or some of the glycosides will remain in the aqueous fraction. So now we know that butanol fraction and aqueous fractions are now rich in the glycosidic content. So we can take these glycosidic rich fractions for further purification in order to isolate the individual glycosides, and this forms the final step of the separation of glycosides, and this involves either crystallization. So one can easily crystallize. If your glycoside is having a crystalline nature, you can crystallize your glycoside from the glycosidic rich fraction, or what you can do is you can expose that fraction or subject your fraction to the chromatographic techniques like column chromatography, which is a conventional technique but still largely used in laboratory practices, or you can subject to the modern techniques like flash chromatography or preparative HPLC. Now by using these crystallization or chromatographic techniques, you can always separate out the individual glycoside which you want to separate from the plant matrix. So this was all about the extraction procedure of the glycosides, that how you can go for separation of the glycosides from the mixture of the compounds that are present in the plant matrix. So now we move on to the classification of the glycosides. So as I told you that glycosides are having a linkage between the sugar molecule and a non-sugar molecule. So we can easily classify these compounds on the basis of the type of the glycosidic linkage that is being formed. One. Or we can also classify these compounds on the basis of the type of the atom that is involved in these glycosidic linkage, whether it is an oxygen atom, whether it is a carbon atom, or some other atom that is involved in the glycosidic linkage of the sugar moiety and the non-sugar moiety. Second is on the basis of the A-glycon moiety. Now A-glycon moiety is the non-sugar part, and as we discussed that this A-glycon moiety can belong to any class of the plant secondary metabolite. So it can be a flavonoidal glycoside, it can be a alkaloidal glycoside, it can be a steroidal glycoside, it can be an anthraquinone glycoside. Now these two methods of classification, that is on the basis of glycosidic linkage or the atom involved in the glycosidic bond, or on the basis of A-glycon moiety, these two methods are the most acceptable methods of glycosidic classification. And amongst these two, the classification on the basis of A-glycon moiety is the most easiest one and is most prevalent amongst the other classification methods. Now apart from these two classification methods, there are other methods of classification which are less prevalent. They are based on the type of the sugar that is attached, the number of the sugars that are attached, and the nature of the glycoside that is present in the plant. Obviously we are also going to discuss those classes. So first we will discuss the classification on the basis of the glycosidic linkage. Now, as I told you that this involves the classification on the basis of the type of the atom that is involved in the formation of glycosidic linkage. So we can classify on the basis of O glycoside, C glycoside, S glycosides, and N glycosides. So coming on to the O glycosides, so whenever the oxygen atom is involved in the glycosidic linkage, we call them as O glycoside. So you can see in the reaction that A-glycon, hydroxyl group of A-glycon, and the hydroxyl or the enomer carbon or the enomer group of the sugar molecule, when they form a bond, a water molecule is released and the bond or the linkage is formed with the help of oxygen atom. And the most common example is the Rein-8 glucoside, which is an anthraquinone glycoside found in senna or rhubarb, which are largely used to relieve constipation. And on the other side we have an example of flavonoid glycoside, which is epigenin 8O glycoside. Then we have C glycosides, and these are the glycosides wherein carbon atom is largely involved in the glycosidic linkage between glycon and the A-glycon part. And we know that anomeric carbon is involved, and anomeric carbon is present in the hemiacetal group. Now when this linkage is formed, this hemiacetal linkage gets converted into the carbon linkage, which is more stable towards the hydrolysis aspects of glycoside, whether it is enzymatic or acidic hydrolysis, and therefore we can say that these C glycosides are more resistant towards hydrolysis in comparison to the O glycosides. And these are the common examples of C glycosides: barbeloin, which is largely found in aloe, Cascarosides, these are again anthraquinone glycosides which are found in Cascara bark, which is Rhamnus pursiana, largely used as a laxative. And last is the example of a flavonoid C glycoside, which is Vitexin and is found in passion flower. Then we have N-glycosides, and here the nitrogen atom is the linking molecule between the glycon and the A-glycon part, and they basically form a C and C type of linkage. And nucleosides are the most common example where the sugar molecule is directly attached to the nitrogen molecule that is present in the A-glycon part. But in plants also we have found N-glycosides, though they are not widely distributed, but very recently two N-glycosides, that is ginkgoside A and ginkgoside B, have been isolated from, you can see their structures on the slide, they have been recently isolated from the plant Ginkgo biloba. And the last class, depending upon the atom involved in the glycosidic linkage, is the S-glycosides, and as their name indicate, sulfur atom is involved in their glycosidic linkage, and they form C-S-C linkage. And these S-glycosides or the sulfur glycosides, they are again more resistant toward hydrolysis than O-glycosides. So we can say that these sulfur glycosides somewhat fall between the C-glycosides and O-glycosides in terms of their vulnerability towards the hydrolysis. And the most common example of S-glycosides is senegrin, and it is obtained from the seeds of black mustard. And whenever these mustard seeds are crushed, the myrosinase enzyme get activated and it immediately hydrolyzes the senegrin glycoside into allyl isothiocyanate. So friends, this was all about the classification, the definition, their properties of these glycosides, and in the classification we have discussed the classification based on the type of atom involved in the linkage. And in the next lecture we are going to discuss about the different other methods of classification of these glycosides along with the individual class of these glycosides. Thank you.